try to get a direction. And sometimes, it's in your attitude, if you're around people and you hear them say, it's raining today, the sun's not shining, then the sun comes out, oh, it's so hot, you can't go outside because of the sun. And then they're always complaining about something. Instead of looking at everything as the glass is half empty, look at it as it's half full. When it's raining, it's rejuvenating the earth, it's giving nutrition to the plants, it's giving a place for the ducks to go and swim. Think of those types of things instead of the fact that your hair is going to, well, in my case, it doesn't get wet. But don't worry about the bad. Focus on what's positive. And you do, and you start changing that. And it doesn't come natural because most people, right, we're reactionary. Our defense mechanisms kick in. And so if something isn't to our liking, we immediately put a stop it. Stop for a moment, reflect. What is positive about this? How can I change my perspective of it? When you start doing this, you'll start seeing it comes to you naturally. It's one of the things I always, I love doing that when I was working in Cadillacs with the guys. I used to always say to them, let's talk about your day today. And I listen to the negativity. I had to get up at 6 o'clock this morning. I have to make the bed a certain way. I'm only allowed 5 minutes in the shower. I was the last one to take a shower, so it was cold water. You know what? Let's look and see how each one of those events is actually something positive for you, and what's the lesson. And that's part of the problem, right? We live either in the past, we're thinking about all the negative things that have built up in the past, and so they occupy our thinking for today. Or we're worried about tomorrow. If you're worried about tomorrow and you're always thinking about the past, guess what? When you wake up tomorrow, you've burned another day of your life. And you're not going to get it back. So stop for a moment and say, what is my day going to look like today? What do I want to achieve today? How many positive relationships or how many people can I influence today with my positive energy? And surround yourself with people with positive energy, because they're the ones that either suck the energy from you or will give you incredible energy. And what I've always found is the people with negative energy, and I'm sure this has happened to you. I mean, as a lawyer, every morning when I got to the office, the first problem that came to me, if it was just a problem, I could deal with it, but if they came with all the emotion with it, I could feel the energy draining out of my body, and I'm thinking, how am I going to get to 6 o'clock or 7 o'clock tonight? Instead, if you start looking at things from a positive perspective, if you start thinking positively, if you take each moment and you stop and you say to yourself, what is the purpose of what I'm doing here today? Why am I meeting this person? And look to determine what all of that is. And when you meet new people, I always tell people when I get an opportunity to speak to them, when you meet someone, always ask the question to yourself, why am I meeting this person? Because I will tell you, the way I work and how I live my life, I don't see myself as a physical person. So it's not about my body. It's not about my mind. Everything I do is about my spirit. It's about the energy that I have and where that energy comes from. And that's spirituality. It's not religion. Because I'm not a religious guy. I'm not in the church every morning doing the rosary, or if I can get to church, I try to get to church because I do need that centering sometimes as well. But it's spirituality. I look around and I see the things that have been created around me, whether it's nature, and I try to always ask myself those basic questions because they feed hope. And a lot of people lose hope when they don't have that ability to connect with who they are. I always say, again, traditions, language, culture, whichever it is, however it is, be proud of it, practice it, instill it in your kids, because what you're doing is you're building the foundations for their mental wellness. And I'll tell you, again, the work that I've done, I was Solicitor General for a while. When I was Solicitor General, I can't tell you how many funerals I've been to of police officers that committed suicide. They didn't look like me, they looked like the Hulk, they looked like Superman, they looked like, I used to say to myself, if I looked like that, you see, they were broken. What was broken was what you couldn't see, their minds. So they were in great physical shape, but they weren't looking after their minds. And so keeping inside them all the trauma that they experienced as police officers, all the trauma that perhaps they had as children that had never been resolved. These things led them to the point where eventually they broke, and when they broke, they committed suicide. So how do you deal with things like that? You have to live in the moment. You have to understand and be who you are each and every moment, and utilize those experiences to reinforce where you came from. And by doing that, again, practicing meditation, practicing yoga, looking at natural ways. I'm one of these people, and I spend a lot of time working with people with addictions. 10 years working at a place called Caritas. And I volunteered my time, but the time that I spent there, I started watching people that had addictions learn how to cope without addiction, without substances. And it was amazing to watch the transformation when they started eating the right foods, when they started having structure in their life, when they saw hierarchy and started working within the structure because they were giving respect, but at the same time they were gaining respect. And again, that spiral starts going upwards to the point that many of these men, when they finish the program, return to their families, return to work, and are happy, and they're doing it without any substance.
Well, it's obvious that, there's a lot of work that needs to happen in our community to be able to assist people who are suffering with a mental illness. What do you think, what are the resources, actually, I think that's a better question. What are some of the resources that individuals can access?
So this is a really good question because, when I started working at Caritas, the story of how Caritas came to be is really funny. Well, it's interesting, it's funny, but Father Carparelli, who used to run it, got a call from a mother who needed help for her son. So he got on the phone, and he phoned the first place he could find, and he said, look, we'll give you a number, call this place, they'll help you. So he called the number, and the person said, look, we can't help you, but I'm going to give you a number. Anyways, after the seventh time, I'm going to give you a number, I'm going to give you a number. The last person gave you a number for the first place. So he said, you know what? There's nothing to help people. So he created Caritas 40 years ago. And he started providing supports for people through a therapeutic community model that he brought here actually from Italy. Ironically, the therapeutic community started in California, but we did away with them because the insurance companies and governments believed, not anymore, I've changed that, but they believe that you can fix somebody in 30 days. You can't fix anything in 30 days, especially in addiction. So basically, the resources that started to be put in place, we worked really hard. There's an organization called Connect Ontario. There's a 211 that I'm sure you're familiar with that's getting a lot of use right now, a lot of referrals. We have a website, ontario.ca/mental health, and you'll see a ton of resources. For young people, we have Kids Help Phone that see, I think there were 20 million kids using it right now across Canada for help. We've developed, and again, you understand this, but just in general, what we tried to do, or what I tried to do when we created the Roadmap to Wellness, is try to break down mental health in categories. So when we talk about the lifespan, we look at kids under the age of 12. Then we look at 12 to 24. Those two age groups, by the way, are the most critical for establishing mental wellness and giving the resilience and tools that kids need for later on in life. And if you miss that opportunity, it's a real problem. And it's not the place for it now, but I can explain to you why it's a problem. It's a huge problem. Because 70% of the mental, just being the statistic, 70% of the mental health issues that we see in adults could have been diagnosed and treated under the age of 24. And so more needs to be done in that age group in providing the supports and services there, the education. And so in the corner there's the youth to youth, our youth wellness hubs. We're now at 32, 28 of them are open. I haven't opened this one yet, but it's coming really soon. We're opening these youth wellness hubs, and so we can say, well, what's a youth wellness hub? When I was a kid, I think many of you when you were kids, the basement of most churches, they used to run these little programs after school for an hour, 2 hours, basically for kids that had no place to go. They've all been shut down. There haven't been any, very few of them. So kids have had no place to go. And when you have no place to go, where do you end up? In a parking lot, in a coffee shop, and maybe even some worse places. And what do you talk about? Because there's no structure. You know, if you're talking to each other, because most of the time these kids, even when you're sitting across from each other, are texting each other. Because that's the crack cocaine of 2024, the cell phone. Social media is killing our kids. And you know it's happening under our noses, and we're not doing anything about it. Not the parents, not the schools are now being forced to because we changed the law. At least during the time that they're in classes, they're not allowed to have cell phones anymore. And the reason we're doing that is that at least we have that period of time, 6 hours, where we can control what they're doing. But I always say it's not enough, because once these kids leave school, then they make up for all. It's like the guy who doesn't drink all day, then he gets home and gets 12 beers, right? It's not going to change. What we need to do as parents is get more engaged, but not just as parents to say, no, we're not going to use the phone. We need to engage them in activities, you know, taekwondo, martial arts, not just taekwondo, but all the martial arts, music lessons, things that kids used to do. There are fewer and fewer of them doing them. So the youth wellness hubs that we're opening are for that. We've had over 200,000 kids, 63,000 unique visits in 23 of these units, which means the kids want the resource. And the resource is very simple. This is a space. You guys decide what you're going to do under the supervision of an adult. We have primary care because, again, young people, and you know, we were all young. Do you remember when you go to the doctor and had a question about something that maybe was a little bit too personal? You were afraid to ask the doctor because you were afraid the doctor was going to tell your parents. Well, these kids have the same concerns. So now they have a doctor or a nurse practitioner that they can talk to. It gives them the opportunity to understand some complicated issues and, again, hopefully make a difference and help them develop and grow properly. And I always say this with boundaries, because the kids today, adults today, none of us have boundaries anymore. Do what you want, where you want, however you want. We don't seem to think that structure in society is important. And it's, without structure, you have anarchy in society. And we're starting to see the results of that because our streets are becoming unsafe. They're becoming unsafe because we can't police them properly, because the police aren't doing what they're supposed to be doing. They're actually having to enforce laws that should be actually preventable through education and through different types of engagement.
So before we let you enjoy the rest of your Sunday, I guess the next best question would be, and you kind of answered already, but what would you like to see change, or what would you like to see happen in the future, the near future, in terms of mental health and addiction?
So when I came to government not because I wanted this job. God, this is really not what I was going to be as a politician. But what I felt I needed to bring about a change, a different way of thinking to government. And I've been really lucky because the Premier recognized that I came to build a community-based system of care for the people of the province of Ontario. Up to now, and believe me, even now, there's a lot of resistance in the work that I do because we've created a hospital-centric system. What that means is that we give all the money to the hospitals and we let them decide what they should and shouldn't do. And so and this is the analogy I use, if 5% of all the mental health issues in the province of Ontario are acute, why are we giving the hospitals 95% of the funding? So the funding model is wrong and the structure is wrong. A hospital-centric system can't help people. And how many people go to the emergency room looking for mental health support and not getting it? And yet, and because of that, you have that story that I said about Vaughan in the 7 phone calls. That happens everywhere, over and over again. And so what happens? Someone has a child that has schizophrenia, they set up a program for schizophrenia because they can't get help. Someone has a child who has an addiction, they set up a center to help their son with an addiction. But because we only deal with boys, what do we do with girls? Another set of parents come along and say, you know what, we need to set up a program for girls because girls are addicted as well. By the way, there's many women now getting addicted to substances as they are men. And it's dangerous because women do not have the same physiological characteristics, the body is not the same mass. When they get addicted, they fall hard. And these, remember, the women are the ones that are having the children. And so when you have a mother who becomes an addict, if they have a child, then you now not just endanger the life of that person, but also like generations to come. So we need to understand these things. And so from my standpoint, what I'd like to do, and I've actually been given the authority to do it, and I have a statistic, it hasn't been published yet, but just Thursday, in the course of the first year that I was in the ministry, the Premier gave me $90 million to invest in bed-based treatment. So what that means is that when a person has an addiction, they go to a withdrawal management program for 3, 5, 7 days, depending on what type of substance it started with. The worst of the substances is fentanyl, or believe it or not, alcohol. Today, there are more people still dying from alcohol poisoning than there are even of fentanyl. That's how serious alcohol is. And it's also the drug of choice for guess who? For women. So when you start off with withdrawal management, you need to have the next step in the community to receive treatment beds. The treatment beds provide the opportunity for the person to start the healing journey. And that healing journey can be anywhere from 3 to 6 to 9 to 12 to 24 months. But you need to have that as part of the continuum. When they finish there, you need to address housing, education, food security, and all the other issues that usually are the reason why the person started with an addiction. And again, when I talk about addiction, you say, but yeah, but you're not talking about mental wellness. I can tell you that in 10 years of being in this field, 5 years as being involved in government, in 15 years, I have yet to meet one person, not one person, who was an addict, that wanted to be an addict, that didn't have an underlying mental health issue. So if that's the case, it means that if we look after people's mental well-being, if we understand the reason why the person started using alcohol or a substance to stay well, to feel better, then once we understand that, we know that by investing in those things, we'll alleviate the pressure. So in the first 400 beds, 300 of them have opened. In the first year of operation, we've had 10,030 people go through the programs that are now abstinent. So we are building a system. I know this is the right system to be building. I don't believe in palliative care. I don't believe in palliative support for people that need treatment. We need to build a system of treatment in the community. And I'm also a huge advocate for collaborations in the community. So you can have a continuum of care, but a continuum of care can't be siloed. All of you, if you're going to be doing this work, you got to collaborate. What are you an expert in? What are you an expert in? What are you an expert in? How are we going to work together to make sure that when a person starts the program, those programs are going to be there throughout, and then there's an aftercare program to continue. If we do it, we do that right. Again, I've studied these systems. I got a doctorate, by the way, on the 11th of September. I defended and I'm a doctorate in psychology now. But the focus of my doctorate is exactly this, is those continuums of care. So when you ask me, what do I want to see? I want to see 95% of the money put into community-based mental health care supports. And at the hospitals, do what they should be doing. Acute care, not looking after people that are broken, that could be fixed by giving them the resources close to home, and very much, but much better than what they ever could get at the hospital.
I think that sounds beyond reasonable, and I'm impressed, and congratulations. We must give the Honorable Writer today a big round of applause. Amazing work. I hope that we can achieve that in the next, 5 years or so. I think that would be awesome.
Well, hopefully, we're going to continue pushing and doing it.
We're going to make sure of that. Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate you struggling and trying to get here. And we hope to see you out there. Enjoy the event.
Thank you.
Thank you.